Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're discussing something that could impact millions of Canadians, the possibility of a Canada Post strike. With labor negotiations still unresolved and the holiday season right around the corner, this issue could have widespread effects for individuals, businesses, and government services across the country. In this video, we'll break down what's happening, why it's happening, and what you can expect if a strike goes ahead. So, let's get into it. First, let's start with how we got here. Canada Post and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, CUPW, have been negotiating since late 2023. CUPW, which represents both urban and rural Canada Post workers, has been advocating for a new contract that addresses key issues facing workers. These issues include fair wages, improved working conditions, and comprehensive health benefits. Postal workers are also pushing for regular breaks during shifts of 5 hours or more, especially because many report working in demanding conditions. The union argues that these demands are essential not just for the workers' welfare, but also for the long-term health and effectiveness of Canada Post as a public service. CUPW leaders say they're ready to strike if they don't see meaningful changes in these areas. So, how has Canada Post responded? In late October 2024, Canada Post offered a wage increase totaling 11.5% over 4 years, along with pension protections. They described this offer as a significant step, and they hoped it would address the needs of postal workers while also preventing a strike that could disrupt services. Canada Post is emphasizing that, given its current financial challenges, this offer is as generous as they can afford. But according to CUPW, this proposal falls short. The union argues that the offer doesn't fully address workers' concerns or meet the rising costs of living. The CUPW leadership emphasized that their members have made it clear they want fairer wages and conditions, and they're prepared to strike to achieve them if necessary. CUPW's national president, Jan Simpson, has been vocal in saying that workers deserve conditions that allow them to perform their jobs effectively and sustainably. Now let's talk about what could happen if negotiations fail and a strike proceeds. As of November 3rd, CUPW has the legal right to strike. By law, they're required to give a 72-hour notice before any strike action, which means they could potentially walk off the job within days if no deal is reached. A Canada Post strike during the holiday season would be particularly impactful. Not only is this time of year crucial for Canadians sending holiday cards and gifts, but it's also when Canada Post handles a significant volume of packages and mail. This time is also financially important for Canada Post, which has been facing ongoing financial challenges. To understand this better, let's take a closer look at Canada Post's financial situation. In recent years, the Crown Corporation has struggled with declining revenues from letter mail, as more people shift to online communication. Meanwhile, the demand for parcel delivery has increased, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, but it hasn't been enough to offset losses in other areas. In fact, Canada Post reported a significant loss of nearly $750 million last year. For a public service that millions of Canadians rely on, this is concerning. Canada Post has made it clear that a prolonged strike could worsen its financial condition, and that it is important to balance the needs of workers with the long-term sustainability of the service. So from Canada Post's perspective, meeting all of CUPW's demands may not be financially viable without impacting the corporation's stability. They are emphasizing that both sides need to come together to find a balanced solution that supports the workers while keeping the service financially stable for the future. If the strike happens, who will feel the impact? Experts suggest that rural communities, smaller towns, and vulnerable populations would be hit the hardest. Rural and remote areas often rely heavily on Canada Post, as there are fewer alternative options available. In urban areas, people have more delivery options with private couriers, but in smaller communities, the situation is different. Canada Post is often the most reliable and sometimes the only option for timely deliveries. This means rural residents could face delays not only in receiving regular mail, but also in essential deliveries like medication, government checks, and packages. For example, the Canada Revenue Agency uses Canada Post to deliver benefits like the Canada Child Benefit. They've advised Canadians to consider switching to direct deposit if they want to avoid any potential delays in receiving these payments. Many provincial governments are also encouraging people to do the same, and some are preparing for alternative delivery methods if a postal strike does happen. For small businesses, especially those that rely on Canada Post to reach customers, a strike could mean delays and additional costs. E-commerce businesses that serve customers across Canada would likely have to turn to private carriers, which can be more expensive, especially for deliveries to remote areas. Major companies like Amazon have said they're monitoring the situation and are prepared to use other carriers if needed, but a shift to private couriers could drive up costs for consumers. Now let's look at some alternatives that may be available if the strike goes ahead. Private courier companies like UPS, FedEx, and Purolator, which is actually a subsidiary of Canada Post, have already stated that they're prepared to handle an increase in demand if needed. Some people and businesses may find it more convenient to switch to these services for important deliveries during a potential postal strike. However, it's important to note that private courier services aren't necessarily available everywhere and may not offer the same affordability as Canada Post, especially for smaller items or letters. So, for people in rural areas or those sending holiday mail to family members, using private couriers may not be a simple or cost-effective option. The Canada Post labor dispute raises broader questions about fair working conditions and the challenges facing public services in Canada. On one hand, workers have legitimate concerns about fair pay and safe working conditions, especially as Canada Post deals with increased demand for deliveries. On the other hand, the corporation faces financial pressures that can't be ignored. It's a balancing act, and finding common ground is key. Negotiations are still ongoing, and both Canada Post and CUPW have said they are committed to finding a solution. But with the holiday season approaching quickly, there's a sense of urgency. Canadians are watching closely to see if a deal can be reached in time to prevent a strike. For now, it's essential for anyone who relies on Canada Post to prepare for possible delays and consider alternatives if needed. In conclusion, the potential Canada Post strike could have widespread effects across Canada, especially for rural communities, businesses, and people relying on government services. While negotiations are ongoing, the outcome is still uncertain. As a viewer, you can stay informed and take steps to prepare. Consider using direct deposit for government checks and possibly exploring alternative delivery services for urgent mail or holiday gifts. Thank you for watching. What do you think about the Canada Post labor dispute? Do you think the postal workers' demands are fair? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on important issues like this. Until next time, take care.